combat first impressions, the look and feel of Vera, and a healthy rant will be covered in this video, so strap in and let's go. Alright, before we get into today's video, you guys, just a quick reminder, if you enjoy this video and the Ashes of Creation content to come, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel, because we're going to be getting real busy here now that the Verbal NDA has been lifted. So I finally got in to test Ashes of Creation for about 2 hours during the latest Alpha 1 spot test. Now, on the weekend prior, I did get into play for about 20 minutes before the servers were brought down for the night, but after all, I am a father and a husband before a gamer, so I didn't get a ton of time to play over the weekend. But it was really nice to sit back yesterday and get a good session for about 2 hours where I could really just settle in and explore the world. A lot of the rubber banding and lag had been resolved or mitigated, which was a huge relief, both in the sense of being able to actually play and test, as well as the fact that the team over at Intrepid is clearly using the data they had been gathering to make major stability improvements. And they did this in a, pretty quickly. During this Alpha 1 test, we have 3 available archetypes, that being the tank, the cleric, and the mage. I chose to play the tank. While I know the combat system has an overhaul tentatively scheduled for the near future, I must say it felt really good. Granted, I only got up to level 3 before I died this go around, which resulted in me getting a pretty hefty experience debt, but we're gonna rant on that in a moment. The skills I unlocked and upgraded up to level 3, however, felt really good. The upgrades provided noticeable gains, and the skills synergized quite well together. If they don't wipe the servers before the next spot test, I will likely keep progressing on the tank to see a few more of the abilities at hand. It seems all classes have a really OP ability or two in their arsenal, and massive tuning adjustments are likely to come. This is just Alpha 1 after all, and combat isn't necessarily the focus yet. With the overhaul in mind though, I focused less on the damage of the abilities and more on the flow of combat, maneuverability, synergy of skills, and just getting kind of a efficient, effective rotation down for my general grinding. Granted, there were some weird interactions and bugs, which I did report, but that is the purpose of us being there, after all. Just to put it in perspective, had I chosen to go deep into the tank tree, rather than powering up the first couple skills I unlocked, I would have a gap closer in the form of a charge, a gap closer in the form of a pull, where you pull them in with a chain like your scorpion or something. You have defensive capabilities to boost your defensive. You have a bleed effect. You have some AoE damage effects that does a little bit more on your primary target. And all of these things generate additional threat, so they inherently help you hold aggro from the other crazy damage that's going on from the cleric and the mage. The point there being that the tank feels very versatile and very capable of fulfilling the role of a tank very early on in the game. So when you can group up with your friends, run into a dungeon and take on some of the elites that are randomly roaming around the world, you can do that at a very low level. It's not just all about racing to end game content. That for me is a huge takeaway of the design goal and focus for Ashes of Creation and the leveling progression system. All right, it's rant time. I have one big concern that I encountered. I expect a lot of bugs, a lot of glitches, a lot of tuning adjustments to come. And I'm hoping that this will be one of those tuning adjustments to come. And that's the experience debt that I had mentioned earlier that you suffer when you die. Whether you die from an environmental misadventure, an enemy NPC, or another player, you will suffer a pretty hefty experience debt. Now, my first test lasted only 20 minutes or so before the servers were brought down. And my very first experience running out of the starting spawn and down the stairs was a red named player who decided to attack me. Now, this is a testing game. This is an open PvP game. Fair. He's allowed to do so. Is it a dick move? Yeah, but he's allowed to do so. Now, of course, I fought back. All I had was my basic attack. I've never played this game before. So I'm sitting there trying to figure out how to attack, and of course there's rubber banding and lag just going on like crazy. No excuses. Got my ass kicked. Okay, I saw I was doing damage to him through the floating text, but his health bar never seemed to go down. Eventually he did kill me. Fine. I'm a level 1, just got into the game. I have no experience in this game. That was the expected outcome when I tried to fight back. I just thought it'd be fun to fight back. Who knows, he might have just left me alone if I didn't, and I just carried on and ran around. I did see him chasing community member Z around later on in the starting area as well. Anyways, I wasn't put off by this, but upon respawning, I noticed that my level 1 self now had an experience debt in and around 30%. I didn't put my mouse over it and see exactly what it was. Didn't realize that you could do that until, the more recent test. But yeah, so it doesn't take away from the experience you've earned so far. It puts an additional debt bar below your experience bar that you have to earn all of that off before you can start gaining positive experience again towards your next level. Now, being level 1 with 30% of experience debt, that's not a lot. That's a couple of monster kills. That's maybe a quest or 2 turn in for your starting quests. You're gonna earn that off pretty quick. But let's fast forward for a sec here to this latest test, where I died to an interactive bottle in the starting area of what I think is a dungeon. Haven't fully explored it yet, but I saw a named elite roaming around through it, and it was starting to get a little dense for my solo self. But let's just say maybe I should have only sniffed the contents of that bottle rather than taking a sip from the bottle, because that gave me some really bad poisoning and I had terrible flashbacks to dysentery in the Oregon Trail. And I definitely died pretty much within a couple seconds. And I wound up with around 40% experience debt. Now again, I didn't hover my mouse over until after I had started to earn some of it back. At that point, I think it was around 35%. So I'm guesstimating in and around 40% was what I had. And I still, even now that the servers are down, have not fully recovered from that. I killed quite a few mobs. I completed a handful of quests after this death, and I still owe, I think, somewhere around 15 to 20% of that experience debt. It turns out to be pretty hefty. Now I'm trying to extrapolate and imagine what that's gonna look like when you're in the level 40s and this happens. It's gonna be a really serious thing. So I know this is a long rant and it sounds like a bitch fest, but here's my concern. I'm all for consequences and meaningful death in the game. That's important, but this feels a little overtuned, and I have a really big issue with the fact that I suffered any experience debt from being PK'd as a level 1 player in the starting area. If I was a brand new player to Ashes, and that was my very first experience, chances are I'm gonna say, fuck this game, and I am not coming back. I'm gonna go play something else. That is a very dangerous position for the game to be in, because you want the game to be welcoming to new players. You do not want your cost of acquiring new players to be very, very high. You want them to come in easily, especially when your barrier to entry into the game is $15 a month. There's no commitment there. There's no commitment from that player to stick around and come back and try this game further beyond that really negative first impression. I have quit games in the past because of this exact thing. When you have a really toxic player who comes into the starting area and kills noobs, and now they suffer a big penalty because of that. Whether it's because they fought back and now they're flagged, or because they dropped any gear, or then now they have experience debt, whatever it is. As a new player, that's a really toxic experience to come into, and unless you have heard really good things and you're really committed to this game, there's a good chance a lot of people are just going to turn and walk away and go back to something else that they know or try something new. That first impression can be brutal if that's what it is. So for PvE deaths, even at level 1, you know what? You have control over your character, where you go, and what you fight. If you die and you suffer experience debt because you went and fought too many monsters or took on something that was too high of a level for you, even as a level 1, you know what? Fine. That was your decision to go do that. You have an element of control over that. Worst case scenario, you glitched out, you start a new character. Bada bing, bada boom. But for PvP, you don't necessarily have control over that. In this type of game, where someone can just come up to you and kill you because they want to, you're now suffering a major consequence for that player's actions. Even if they get killed by a guard, an NPC, you don't get anything back. You're still down and out. And as a new player, first impression, that's bad. That's something I would like to see changed. Let's move on. Now, aside from that, I actually found the game quite enjoyable during this Alpha 1 stage. Of course, there were bugs and performance issues and weird visual glitches going on throughout the world and throughout the test. But this is an Alpha 1 testing environment. It's expected. That being said, I was actually pretty impressed with the world and environment that we had to test in. The world is gorgeous. Like, it is visually stunning and beautiful, as we've seen in this footage that they have leaked during the live dev streams every month. It's beautiful, okay? I was running the game on max settings with my GTX 1080 and 2K, and I had no issues on my side. Now, when we get to the point where the visual NDA is lifted and I have to stream from the same machine, we might start to encounter problems, but that's going to be more hardware limitations on my side. The enemy NPCs are diverse and unique. The mounts looked awesome. There was a good diversity of mounts in the game that you could purchase once you leveled the node up high enough. Nodes were being developed. I think up to level 3 was the highest ones. And they provided a really cool feel to the world. I remember when I was running up to the new node following a quest, because the quest takes you to a few different nodes near the starting area. And I'm running up and it had already been leveled up to stage 3, and it's got the big wooden walls all surrounding the node with gates. There's guards standing around outside. There's buildings that are under construction inside the node. And you can see a clear state of progression happening as this civilization starts to take form. That was a really cool experience. And you come outside of the walls and all around, you're back in the raw world. Like you just went, you set up camp and you started to build a city, and now you're building defenses to keep the monsters and enemies out. Really, really cool feel. And I cannot wait to see further expansion of those nodes growing as they grow into metropolises, and how it just evolves and shapes the world around you. I'm really excited for that. I have yet to make it out to the ocean, but I hear it's pretty gorgeous out there. And being that I do want to eventually live in and around a coastal node, so hopefully during one of these upcoming tests, I will have the time and I will just gun it straight for the ocean, and we'll go and make a home out there. There were houses available for purchase. I don't know if anybody actually did. I think they were about 1,000 gold. And, you know, I was only level 3. Gold wasn't exactly easy to come by, but there were some pretty wealthy players in the game. Maybe they had some Pve debt that they were collecting. I don't know. There's sieges that are going on right now. I did see one of the castles. I ran up to it, but there were some high-level NPCs in there. I said, nah, not for me right now. There was no siege taking place at the time. I haven't got to see that in action yet, but they have been testing the sieges. From what I've heard, they've gone fairly well. So hopefully within an upcoming test, we'll get to check that out. We'll do a video on that. There's dungeons hidden around the world. You just run up and, hey, there's a cave over there. You can go in and explore the cave, and it's a dungeon. Or there's some ruins up on a hill, and there's some enemies have taken hold in there, and you have to go into the ruins and check it out. That's where I, drank the contents of the bottle instead of sniffed it. Note to self, don't drink, sniff first. I've actually seen fully released games, you guys, that have an offer less than what we're already seeing in this Alpha 1. And to me, that's huge. That is actually huge. I'll end with this. The best part of this whole experience was actually getting hands and eyes behind my own character in the world of Vera. After all this time, all this hype, all this speculation, we got tangible proof of this project coming to life. And while there is still an Everest-sized mountain of work to do, this testing is helping build a foundation to withstand many years of MMORPGers conquering the world known as Vera.